Welcome to the Monday Club, in association with Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. And this week we look back at the shock of the championship and an Ulster semi-final not too many people saw coming. Okay, I am joined today by Cahair. You look tired. It was a long day, wasn't it? We'll come to that. And Irish News sports editor Paul McConville.
Why don't you look tired?
You just fresher.
Why do you look hungover?
I don't think. That's what I hate. Like I just hide it better. You learn that the older you get, the better it is to hide.
Yeah.
How does it feel, Neil? Sorry, before we start. After a weekend of investigative journalism where you unveiled Conor Laverty's PIN number to everybody.
I know. I wish I had the technological capability to actually wipe it out, but it wasn't.
You're really going to mess with his head now. Like he's going to have to change it.
I know. Like he'll have screenshotted that. Him screen.
You'll be in screenshot.
I'll be in screensaver now for the next 3 weeks or the next 7 days. Yeah, but here, isn't it good to see an old school? 0-0-0.
Absolutely. Like,
somebody said to me on Twitter, he'll have to change it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 now. Or else he'll not get up there. But yes, apologies to Conor.
And the number of times that he's going to change it now, and the number of times over the next week he's going to hit 0-0-0-0.
I know. And it's so frustrating. He'll be swearing at the phone.
He's going to think of you every time he does it.
I know.
But Neil's one of the most trustworthy guys around.
That's the impact.
Oh no, I'm not going to nick his phone and start looking through stuff.
That's the impact that you have on people.
It is. Yeah, you see, just lets the guard down.
Put them at ease.
Yeah, a mad old day in Letterkenny yesterday, which we're going to talk about in the context, of course, of the fact that there's an Ulster semi-final on Sunday against Armagh, and on Saturday there is Derry and Monaghan in Armagh. We're going to come to them both a little bit later. Obviously, any other business, we'll tidy up some of that first, because we had the Kerry and Cork going into the Munster final, straightforward enough. Leitrim give Galway plenty, and Down Hurlers got another win. Antrim Hurlers got another defeat. I'm really just counting down the seconds so we can talk about Down.
That's okay. We'll get this out of the way. I think it's worth pointing out that this is my first appearance in the podcast since the infamous Best 15 where I left out David Clifford.
Have you anything you want to say?
I want to say.
Apologise to the general public.
No, I don't want to apologise to the general public. I think the general public should apologise to Jason Foley, because I think he's been the collateral damage on all this. Because
he's doubling down.
He was the man that he was the carrying man, and he put him a team. So the absolute disrespect shown to Jason Foley is just
Did you see the interview in
ridiculous,
60 seconds? Well, that's a whole different kettle of fish. You woman off 60 seconds. No, well, we'll just not go there, but it's worth looking up afterwards.
Okay.
You called him Paul Trump there. So
right. Okay.
A wee clip of it this morning there.
No. But
I spent the weekend watching that Russell Brand clip, to be honest with you, of him searching through
trying
the
to find
Isaiah
What's he done?
to countdown music and stuff. I'll have to show you after, but it's brilliant. It's
all I could think of was Isaiah Whitlock from the
Wire. Yeah. Oh, explicit warning. Almost there.
Kerry got the job done. Cork got the job done.
And Roscommon, we talked last week, about obviously the big game we thought was going to be, the eye-catching game of the weekend was Roscommon and Mayo. Roscommon went into Castlebar and won much handier than probably a lot of people expected.
You're looking at me as if to say you particularly.
You've been kind of putting this line across for a few weeks about that Mayo spent I feel like I'm getting it, but I'm not. But I'm just contextualising this. But that Mayo had spent the league kind of learning how to attack. I had a concern that they might not have learned how to defend. When it came to games like this, and I guess that bore out to a degree.
I think, without having studied in any detail, I think the biggest issue was the in-between bit of the two of them. It was getting their hands on the ball. I think they got annihilated on the kick-out in the second half. And it's like anything. It is, we keep saying it, but same as the league final, you're no matter what forwards you have, you can't do anything without the ball. And if you're getting hammered on your kick-out, what did Roscommon score? 111 or 112 off the Mayo kick-out? Like, that's a massive number. And if you're conceding that off your own restarts, then you're in trouble regardless of what else you have or what else you do. So look, I would need to sit and watch it properly. There just weren't enough hours yet in
Yeah,
the day.
I caught a bit of the second half, and obviously Jimmer Murda was fantastic, got all the headlines from the scoring and stuff like that. But Enda Smith was great. You know, the way he knitted things together, brought them forward. As you said, they absolutely ruled the kickouts and stuff like that. I mean, and again, you know, I don't know. Is it a case of, I think,
when you see what Leitrim did to Galway's kickouts as
Yes.
well for large periods of the other semi-final on Saturday, you again
68%
Yeah.
in the second half.
there's part of me thinking, and I mean, this might be kind of a way out there, like, but I mean, in terms of the way the All Ireland Championship is structured this year, in that you have 2 games and there's probably a bit more jeopardy involved in it. There's are teams like, you know, Mayo, Galway, Donegal to an extent, maybe looking too far ahead down the summer. Maybe, I don't know, taking the eye off the ball in the provincial championships, knowing that there's that safety net of, well, we're in the All Ireland Championships, but it's not 3 group games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas three group games, you used to be like, well, even if you lost your first 2 matches, if you win one, you could sneak
was a
through
safety
in
net to a degree,
preliminary
like-
quarter final. Whereas there's a lot more jeopardy now involved.
Kieran
with that
McGinney
doing
did
it.
allude to that a few weeks ago, didn't he? About that you now, although like obviously they have been the provincial championships have been detached from the All Ireland, you know, for a while, but you know that they now probably a lot of managers are looking at them as 2 very distinct entities, like because of the format change as a result. And Donegal will be the same now, you know, like they're like Jim McGuinness yesterday afterwards. You know, this is complete like uncharted territory for Donegal in his term, of course. Like that's only his second ever, you know, defeat in Ulster, and they're now facing, is it 4 weeks until the first round of the All Ireland series?
It's the end of May sort of thing.
Very, you know, which is just, he was sort of like, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do, you know, because we've never been in this position.
Yeah, it's the first time they've been beaten outside of an Ulster final in 7 years. So he has no experience. It's the one probably thing that he has no experience of, having managed this period of not having necessarily gamed. But
the polar opposite to last year. Do you remember
Yeah,
obviously
and
there was
bang,
a weekly
bang, bang.
conversation about it
Yeah.
every week, you know, we've been out 7 weeks in a row or so forth.
yeah,
And I think half of those Ulster Championships that have been won from the preliminary round as well.
They have won
They've
off
always
from
had
the
about 4 games, and as you said, they're week in, week out. So it's going to be a whole new sensation for them, like, you know.
but it feels like, you know, coming home thinking about it last night, like there's a lot of similarities between that and the Cork game last year. And not for once, I don't even believe that affects Donegal's All Ireland chances all that much at all,
Yeah.
other than it makes it more difficult in the sense of their first round game is now going to be away from home. And if you catch a bum draw, you could be in Kerry.
Yeah.
They could very easily be in Kerry on the first round in Killarney. Now, wouldn't that be some crack?
Mm-hmm.
And then but yeah, I suppose the nature of it. So if they go to Kerry, they still have another life beyond that.
Aye.
And it's very difficult to see Donegal being beaten 3 times.
Yeah.
You know, like it's very difficult to see them being beaten 3 times. So
Yeah.
even if they go to Kerry, I think worst case scenario.
So there's still not quite. There's still that kind of that.
There is
safety net still
there
there,
absolutely
obviously,
is a safety net for that one round beyond the All Ireland series. So, beyond the provincial series. So they'll get themselves gathered up. The Cork game last year, there was a lot of the same sort of, you know, it burst the bubble, or it felt like it burst the bubble, but actually it just re-energized them. It came at the perfect time for them when it didn't matter. They will not say, because they've been so sort of hyper focused on winning Ulster all the time, that they'll not say that this didn't matter. Like the way the Cork game didn't matter at all last year. But in terms of Donegal's All Ireland ambitions, I would doubt that they will come up against anything again for the rest of this year, like what they came up against in Letterkenny yesterday.
Okay, so let's open the floor to this one. It still feels like I drove home last night, and normally coming home from a match like that, I would have like
Sunglasses
podcast
on,
or no,
hair
it
flowing,
was dark, and a big bag of chips,
your sunroof down.
But you know, you'd normally be listening to something, or like I just sat in silence for 2 hours, just trying to.
The radio broke or what?
No,
I don't even know what I listen. You're saying I
just
don't even know
wanted
what I
to.
listen
I just was trying to think back, like because
What
when
do they
you're,
call that? Raw dog? Raw? Yeah, when you sit on a flight.
I really hope you're right.
Something like that. Yeah, I really hope they- yeah. Something like that.
Edit. What's the timestamp for that? Edit?
No, these ones that they sit on a plane for 8 hours and don't listen to anything. Or
Hold
don't
on to check on Twitter here.
Yeah.
And see what that is. No, it was, and it was. I mean, obviously, we Cahair and I were there. We were working at it, and you do be in a bit of a bubble and a bit of a zone, I suppose, and until you come out of that and you're sort of have an opportunity to think about it. But Paul, from your perspective, watching it from home, and the words quietly confident. I put this on the live blog yesterday because I met Frank Dawson and Emmett Hockin when I was coming into O'Donnell Park yesterday and chatting away, and they were the 23rd and 24th people within the space of about 3 hours saying to me, I'm quietly confident. I just have a good feeling. But so many people had a good feeling, and I just I kind of shared it as well. But it was nothing.
You weren't.
But it
was not last week.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't confident, but I had a feeling that something, that they were going to do something. But it's nothing tangible. I don't know. It's a weird one. Maybe you get a day like that.
You think that it's weird one too, because I'm an eternal pessimist, but I'm also a Down fan. So those two things are incompatible sometimes, because if Down had been rooted to the bottom of Division 4 for most of the year, they would still think, we got a chance. There's just that thing, because I think when you think about the All Ireland's Day one, there were one in the old style championship where it was just on the day and you won, it was all on it. So I mean, I think that's
it was pure momentum.
Yeah, so that residual energy or residual memory from days gone by. They're like, if we really get it up, we can beat anyone. Now, I don't know at what stage you were talking to people, whether people knew about Michael Langan missing out, or that had been bubbling around for a few days, and things like that, because that played a huge factor in it. And obviously, Keelan Mooney coming in was a massive curveball. And
again,
I think
there had been a few whispers about that through the week that he might possibly play, but
well, I think it was initially on the standby. Was he initially on the standby list, and then he came into the 26, and then obviously started. And I suppose obviously Nicole laid it deck. Donegal were overwhelming favourites, and from the management point of view, Down, if you're going to win a match like that, you need something. You need a curveball. You need something kind of out of the ordinary, But in terms of confidence going into it, we referenced it a few weeks ago. You look at Down's Division 3 final against Wexford, and that was a reference point for a lot of people thinking, or so-called pundits or whatever, that's, if they play like that against Donegal, they'll be absolutely rinsed. But then again, as Mickey Donnelly said before the match, and then obviously Conor Laverty referenced it afterwards, there was a level of disrespect aimed at them, which they had to, was fuel for them as well, So
but I think that, again, I maybe said this last week, but I do think that we're pretty close to Down. We would see maybe more of them than the general media and the general public in a lot of ways. And as we have probably said repeatedly over the last 3 or 4 years, we've all felt that they've made a wild lot of progress, and they're a lot better than they were. But you had Colin Parkinson saying that Down, the words are relevant. Down were irrelevant because Donegal had beaten them anyway, and obviously that stirred a hornet's nest in a wee bit. But they're probably, people are just looking at the black and white of it. So where's the improvement? They're still in Division 3. They're still, as they saw it, still heading for the Halcyon Cup.
They still haven't got the big win.
Still haven't got the big one. Where's all this improvement at? But so motivation wise, it probably made it pretty easy for Down in the sense of naturally everybody was writing them off. I don't think anybody. I didn't see anybody tipping the one. Nobody
no.
Very, very few.
Well, everybody
give them any sort of a chance.
Everybody in this podcast a few weeks ago, the head of the championship was tipping Donegal to win.
Absolutely.
Or did you tip Armagh? I think, did you?
I can't
even remember.
But definitely
Donegal to win
didn't
of Ulster. Do you know what I mean? So it's not so much that you're dismissing Down, but you're thinking, well, obviously,
and
Donegal,
it's natural.
Armagh,
They've just beaten Kerry out the gate in the Division 1 final, and you're thinking, well, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered who it was coming into them. You probably would have fancied Donegal. If it was Armagh coming into them, if the gun was to your head, you'd probably still have said Donegal.
Yeah.
So
Conor Laverty said as much yesterday. He said, in not so many words, you know, how could, you know, like it's hard to make an argument, you know, when Donegal like were so many people's tips to win the All Ireland, like after what they did to Kerry a month ago, you know what I mean? So like
And then
it's very easy to be an after-timer with these
Jim
things.
McGinnis
Like,
said at the start of last week, it's a free hit for Down. And he wasn't saying that in a condescending way, because I know Jim McGinnis has a huge respect for Conor Laverty and he's huge respect for Down. But I mean, it was in many ways a free hit in case, instead of, you know, they could go, and even in the closing stages when it was neck and neck, and it was like you thought to yourself, if Donegal kick on here and win by 2 or 3 points, it's still a very good day for Down, you know, in terms of the performance level and all that. But I mean, going back to what Cahair said in terms of, you know, not many people were watching that much. I've probably watched more of Down than most people in the league this year, and there were good parts and there were bad parts, and you know that Conor Laverty sort of referenced that, and he dressed that up in the sense of like, you're in Division 3, it's a dogfight, it's a result.
It's a grind.
It's a grind. And he tried new things, and there was, you know, different players brought in and out and stuff like that. And even like that half-back line of, you know, Callum Rogers, Shane Annan, Pierce McPolin, that was honed during the league, you know, and they got a lot out of that without actually, you know, hitting those big headlines. And after every game, he would reference at least one of those players and said, you know, they had a great game, they, you know, put in a good shift and all that sort of thing. And it's about developing that team. And I don't think he would have cared if he had won 7 games by 1 point in the league. You know, as long as they got it's a means to an end. And meanwhile, you're beavering away, because the Donegal game's always in the back of your mind. You know, I don't know at what stage during the league it became to the front of his mind. Maybe when they secured promotion, I don't know. But you know, he would have had those ideas in his head a good way before it. So look, it's a balancing act, and that's why you earn your corner as a manager. You know, you get the job done, but you also, you know, you come up with those plans for the future. Like,
when you say, like, God, he earned his corn in some way on Sunday. I have to say, like, the way that Down did it was
that's what I was going to ask about Cahair, actually, because you said last week, you know, went through what Down did right last year, and you know the probably frustration that they would have had in some respects, because they left a lot of scores behind them, like the 2 point issue, like Donegal kicked more 2 points than Down did, and got out the gate comfortably enough in the end. But we were sort of thinking last week, what did they do? Like, and we're saying, well, maybe that's the template again, but they didn't. They ripped that up completely and went for the jugular basically. Like, and we're like, well, that's the way to try and put Donegal on the back foot and see how they like it.
Absolutely. You mentioned there about Jim McGinnis respecting Down, and it's funny because I think if you look at the first 10 minutes of the game, I think you see how much Donegal actually showed them the respect as well. Like, they had so much homework done on Ronan Burns' kick out. Like, Donegal took 4 of the first 6 off him, and that would have been something that would have been probably worrying Down at that point. But they stuck to what they were doing.
He was the first name McGinnis mentioned.
Yeah.
When he spoke about Down before, or Murdoch or anybody, he mentioned Ronan Burns.
He's brilliant. Look, I don't need to say it again. Like, I'm fed up saying it, but the way
we're
that
not fed up you saying it.
The way that they overloaded around the arc and they dragged Donegal, and then they created the wee pocket in the middle. They were so clever in how they manipulated Donegal's press out of the way and found the gap. And Burns is so switched on to when the gap appears, he's so accurate kicking it into the gap that you know. So Down had done the amount of work that Down had to do to still be better than a Donegal team that had visibly done a huge amount of work on that. It would be different if Donegal had just turned up and were complacent or were lazy about it and said, you know, Down, Ronan Burns, whatever, we'll just press the way we pressed. They didn't do that. And then it was when they got the ball, it was, let's go straight down the middle of these boys. All day. They ran right down the middle. And it was,
like you said yesterday, like it was nearly like the thing that nobody thinks to do against Donegal, because you look at them, the way they're set up defensively, and go, well, there's no point. So you try and find other ways to manipulate that space or get in behind them.
Yeah, and again, because we're recording this on Monday morning, like I'd love to get another look at it, but I wonder, because obviously Oran Murdoch for me was head and shoulders man of the match. Now Daniel Guinness was brilliant as well, but I thought Murdoch was outstanding, and particularly in the context then of how Langan did on him last year as well. But how much of, you know, Down knowing that McGonigal might go to him and being aware that McGonigal might go to him and pulling McGonigal out of his natural hole. And there's the middle open, lads. You know, McGonigal's not there. He's going to mark Murdoch.
So there's the space.
So there's the space, and we're going to hit it.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, nerd alert.
Klaxon,
But
sound the
nerd
klaxon.
klaxon. Out of the 35 shots down took yesterday, they took 27 of them from within 25 metres of the Donegal net. Like, their ability to work the ball into the right, but I think it was 21 of them were from the 21 metre line or inside.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's incredible. That to work that against a team that you think, right, the last thing that we want to do is go in there.
Absolutely.
Let's play around them. Let's try and open them up from the wings. Let's try. Down just did the complete opposite, and it is, you know, there's an awful lot of template coaching, and I do believe that the more I thought about it, you know, Donegal hadn't and won't have faced anything like that in Division 1 football because it's safer and it's more structured and it's slower, in the sense of it's not slower when teams decide to go, but there are more slow structured attacks certainly than what Down brought yesterday. Down just brought
And
direct.
It's funny that Laverty also referenced the harder ground yesterday, because it's the sort of game, as you sort of hark back to those league games that Down were playing. I mean, at least 3 or 4 of those games in Uri, it was just pelting rain, there was wind, there were just awful nights. And his reference the half back line, you know, being sort of honed during that period of time. They were trying those runs, they were trying those things, but obviously, you know, the result was the main thing. They had to go long a few times, but the fact of it was, by the time the ground hardens up and the sun comes out, and we all know that Down love to play in the sun, you know, that running game just comes into its own, just bursts into its own. And then obviously, you know, the Kilcoo background to that as well can't be ignored. You know, those that quick running game, the goal. I mean, look at the goals that they scored. You know, they're off that just quick fighting those gaps and darting through them and all. You know,
the precision of the hand passing and the decision making, like that. Again, we're talking, right, so how have Down improved in the last 4 years? Their level of decision making in those tight spaces yesterday was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, how often did they give the ball away? How, you know, for a split second you think the hand pass is the right option, and then you don't take it, and all those wee things that they just got right repeatedly over the 70 minutes was unbelievable. And I just think that, you know, so Donegal haven't faced this, and it's like, you know, they're set. Once they get set, you're going to have bother breaking it down. And you just look at it yesterday, like Donegal just spent the entire day scrambling.
Yeah.
I can't remember too many occasions when they got their defence set. Down didn't allow them to get it set. And the minute that they sort of threatened to get it set, you know, when Donegal got the bodies back, Down were so alive to that's when we pop it back out. Yeah. And Havern kicked the 2 pointers. Actually, they only had 3 goals for 2 pointers, and 2 of them they scored, and the other one was on an advantage that Daniel Guinness just thought, right, you know, there's no harm. I'll have a brilliant block by McGonigal. There's a good chance that was going over too. So, like, they were just so clever and brave and innovative. You know, like, it's the easiest thing in the world to just do what everybody else does.
That's what made it so exciting, though, wasn't it? Like,
yes,
when you were,
but it's the easiest thing to do what everybody else does, but when you don't have the tools to do what everybody else does, and they make this big thing of like Down don't have too many big men and all that sort of thing.
Like,
but
that's way overblown.
Oh, absolutely. But that's what I'm saying. You know, you have Havern and Murdoch and guys like that, and they can mix it up. They can't be innovative. They can use what's available to them. Like, you know,
how clever they were as well. Like I referenced in the report this morning, like at times, like, and the way that they were manipulating the Donegal press in the short, and it was the men who, so Murphy and McFadden were attached to, and they were dragging those two in, and then they were leaving it that they had taken a couple of Donegal's big men out of the long kick, and they were able to go long and win it. And it was like it seemed like just everything was thought about, every scenario, everything, that this is what Donegal are going to do, so this is what we do when they do that. And it felt like it was honestly, it was such a masterclass.
And even, you know, so we've spoken a few times in the past about maybe the correlation between the progress that Down have made, and you referenced it earlier, Cahair, you know, talking about like that people might look at the bare facts of things that they're still in, we're in Division 3 and so forth, but we've compared it to Armagh's progress over a period of time under Kieran McGeeney in the early years. And you see yesterday when Jason McGee scored, and what did
The
that
two
bring it? Was
pointer,
that
150 apiece.
And at that point, and you could feel then the crowd was starting to get behind Donegal, and just thought, right, okay, like that's what it felt like to me. I was thinking, here we go. This is the part where the glorious failure kind of kicks in, and we've seen these near misses. The Armagh game a couple of years ago, Monaghan last year, Galway, but it was the calmness. And again, this is where Ronan Burns, as a find in the last couple of years, has completely revolutionised Down in so many ways. Like, and obviously there'll be so much talk about the Owen Murdochs and Havern and Daniel Guinness, but the calmness, even in that last 10 minutes, like, he was just picking Donegal apart at times, and that's give the platform for Down just to see that out and to actually be comfortable.
But if you reference those games, the Armagh one especially from 2 years ago, and even the Galway one, there was always a sense of, we're going in as underdogs, we're just going to have a right good go at these, and so there wasn't at any point yesterday where Down played like they thought they were underdogs, if you know what I mean. As Cahair says, everything was so finely tuned. They weren't overawed by the occasion. They weren't overawed by the opposition. I mean, to the point where the Donegal's big, Murphy and all, just getting frustrated. There was a foul on Guinness in the second half of Murphy, which
McHugh.
You get the yellow card for, and things like that, and McHugh getting stripped of it, and who was Conor O'Donnell turnover of Mooney. It just typified that. It's just like we're on your level.
On Hugh McFadden as well, around the same time. Like those were two big turnovers, because that was a 116 to 115, the Mooney one, and the Sheehan Annett one was the next Donegal.
And Down had just given the ball away.
Down had just given the ball away, and that was the one where Liam Kerr popped into Keelan Doherty. It was bad ball. But you mentioned there the Donegal goal and the 2-pointer from Jason McGee on both those occasions. Look at how fast Ronan Burns had the ball on the tee and gone. And I always remember Kerry in the quarter final against Armagh that we keep talking about. But one of the things that really stands out for me was when Rory Grugan scored the goal that day, just before half time. Right. Sheehan Ryan had the ball on the tee and gone before Armagh even knew it was gone, before the crowd had realised the ball was back in play, and Kerry almost went up and scored a goal. Look at how close down were they scoring a goal off the next
15
attack.
seconds or something.
I tried to watch it back on the replay last night, and by the time the television was stopped showing the replay, Down were on the 21 metre line at the Donegal end of the field, and in the ground, that kick out was so fast, and it was as if again, I'm back to nothing is going to rock us here. So we are prepared. So if Donegal score a goal, that ball's on the tee and that's gone within 3 seconds, and we're out the gap. I can't praise it enough. I just cannot praise everything that Down did and brought to the game, because it is one thing for everybody to say, just go out and have a cut at it and just go out, but you cannot have a cut at a team like Donegal, certainly not the cut that Down had off them, and scoring 321 and could have been 6. You cannot have that cut without that level of preparation and homework. That was so. Obviously, the players have to make decisions. You can't orchestrate every move, and you can't orchestrate how attacks are going to go, but you can put them in the positions and the situations where this is what we do in this situation.
But it's mental strength as well, because as you referenced the first Donegal goal, where Burns had the kick. Time's gone by, players might turn around and start blaming each other. Oh, he was your man. He was your man. There's no time to dwell on it or post-mortem it. It's just right. That's it. Move on.
His first kick out of the day, Callum Roy, it's so nearly. Brian Gallagher was on top of him. Like that at that point, the nerves could have started to kick in. And think, geez, I don't know. But it was
losing 4 of your first 6 was a lot. And you could have broke you. It could have made you right. Geez, we'll have to go long here, and they never panicked. They just kept their movement. I would love to see their GPS numbers, because look at everything that they brought to every side of the game. Their movement on their kickouts, and then when they got the ball, how hard they ran up the middle, and then when they were defending, how much pressure they put on around the arc, and how much pressure they put on the shot. Donegal kicked 3 of their first 14,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a lot down to the pressure that was on the shot. Like the energy levels,
Even the goal, like when you look at it, like Pierce Laverty had actually done really
Yes.
well to force Conor O'Donnell off balance, you know, and that's why his shot dropped short and it just it fell.
It fell,
free
I
kick,
fell
you know,
nicely, yeah.
But I think what Donegal do, and I noticed it early on yesterday, is they make the pitch very, very big. You will drag it down, sort of match them in that regard in terms of like, well, we're going to start pulling you around. Just like, you know, they've obviously got the energy levels Donegal do, but you know, Peter Mogan very early on was obviously that great outlet, but then he got stemmed very early. Mulroney came up for a kick out very early,
and they targeted him.
and then he just sunk back, you know. So it was just kind of like, Down knew exactly where the threats were and just blunted them off like very early on.
I mean, we've talked, obviously we're enthusing about Down here, but on the Donegal thing, like, is there any? You mentioned that, you know, the work that they had done on Down and the complacency and the respect, the lack of complacency and the respect that Jim McGuinness has for Down, having been in with them for a time in 2023, and he was glowing about a lot of the Down players afterwards. But, you know, just talking to some of the Down camp afterwards, like, and I think there was a wee sense, like, they were sort of going, well, you know, would Michael Langan, for example, have played had it been Armagh? So much of the rumours going around beforehand was that it was a season-end injury. McGuinness said it's a rolled ankle. You know, like, you saw him before; he looked not too bad. You know, like,
he looked fine. Like,
it's those kind of things. Like, do you think there was any element of them maybe looking towards Armagh?
No, I don't. I really don't. Like, I just honestly feel that they didn't anticipate. And I didn't anticipate, and I don't think anybody anticipated the way that Down went about it, and the attack, in the attacking sense, and how Down attacked them so hard and such numbers and so incisively down the middle and didn't let them get set. And I just think that, you know, there was no body of evidence there for Donegal to expect that. Yeah. You know, and like what I expected the game probably to look like was more like last year's game, where I felt that Donegal would have so much respect for Murdoch in particular that they would sit off again and give Down the block in the middle to keep possession for spells. And I expected the game to look more like that, and it didn't at all. Now, I'm not saying like what I think is relevant at all, but I'm just saying, like, there was nothing there to suggest that Down were going to do what they did yesterday. And so were Donegal complacent? I don't believe they were at all. They were just caught. They were just caught. I just think they were completely caught out by a game plan that nobody saw coming, and was brilliant and was ruthless and efficient. But I think complacent's completely the wrong thing.
One of the big differences last year was Patton's kicking as well, which was you know, able to clear that whole sort of midfield sector and hone in sort of on that Down half back line.
But even like Mulroney was stuff like Mulroney was 11 out of 11 at half time.
Well, there was a lot of them very short, like some of them were like daisy cutters, like, you know what I mean.
And Down again part of the plan, like they seem to deliberately want Mulroney to go to his corners, as if, you know, they were pressing, but they left Mulroney the corner and knew he would take it. And then Down set their press up from there, and they pressed high, and they tried to, you know, they really squeezed Donegal up. Yeah. So, like, again, just back to how much preparation and how much work. Like Conor Laverty said afterwards, like, they'd spent the last 10 days together. And so much of the last 4 weeks together. You know, it showed. It really showed.
And we'll touch just on, like, one of the narratives around the game then was this challenge game that they had in Kerry last Saturday. Flew down on the Friday, apparently. Yeah. We ran our trip down from Dublin.
Did they fly?
Apparently so, yeah.
I think Pat Spillane said they had flew on the...
That's what I was told anyway.
Oh, you were told?
Not by Pat Spillane, by somebody else. But
all right. Yeah,
I've been wrong before, like, but that's what I was told. Yeah. But
because there were a couple of laughs on the pitch just about flying down. And
oh, really?
So
maybe...
but I'm not...
They flew from Ballyholland Airport, actually.
Okay. Rachel Duffy flies into it. But, you know, like, and again, these things grow legs when the result goes the way it does, I suppose. Like, but I thought it was interesting, Conor Laverty talking afterwards about the risk that came with that, because if you, and he said even some of the Down camp were sort of looking at him going, are we really doing this? Like, is this a week out from this game? Is that the idea? And obviously, like, Donegal and Kerry are not similar in terms of how they play in a lot of respects, but there's a bit of ballsiness to.
Where's the risk?
The risk
Down are the only county the Kerry have never beaten in championship football. Neil.
But what about
Jesus
challenge
Lord.
matches?
What about challenge?
Don't count. Not on
They
the
get
record.
the chance.
They count if you get beat by 25 points. That was the danger.
That's the danger. I mean, if you go down there and like, yeah, we know that. Like, sure, we saw what Kerry did to Mayo a few months ago, you know, in the league, and they wiped the floor with down. Then that's a big pickup job. Like,
that's probably it over. In terms of the Donegal game, like if they
or are we overselling? I'm wondering.
No,
are
I
we
don't think
guilty
we
of
are.
overselling
No, I think
because it's a challenge match at the end of the day.
I think you look at and this is no disrespect to who they played in Division 3, but Down played the opposition that they played in Division 3 didn't allow. You know, I think this Down team always, you know, look better against better opposition in terms of they raise their game. You know, in Division 3 there's so many dogfights, there's so many games that were just like slogs. You know, you need that higher level of opposition to prepare for a higher level of opposition, like, you know. But yeah, there's a certain gamble to it. Like, I mean, because nobody's getting past Jason Foley, like he's best defender now. But there is a certain risk to it. But like, Down are not going to beat Donegal by being conservative and risk free. Like,
No,
I
think
Kerry's different.
I think it's a massive risk in the sense of if that goes wrong, you know, that is 7 days out. That is an enormous dent to the confidence and everything that you're trying to, every plan that you're trying to lay, every trap that you're trying to set for Donegal. And if you go to Kerry and they all collapse, or 3 or 4 of them, the sort of central pillars of what you're going to do collapse in that challenge game, the doubt that feeds into the players' minds from there for the 7 days is probably catastrophic. Like, I don't think they can beat Donegal, but because it went well, because they were
even
like,
for 35, 40
for 40
minutes,
minutes,
yeah,
and then I think, you know, maybe both teams changed up a wee bit for all we know. Like, but I think Down defended really well, and I think that, you know, it was a massive risk. It was a calculated risk, and it turned out so well for them because, as you say, they probably had so little exposure to a game. They had no exposure to a game like that since the Galway game last year, and the Galway game, it was just interesting. They scored 321.
And
in the Galway
exactly
game,
the same.
and they scored 321 again yesterday. Like, and you know, again, I would, in my mind's eye, the way that they created shots, like a lot of the Galway shots were inside as well. Remember them creating goal chances and having loads close to goal, and they bring something different. They bring a wee bit of real innovation to games. They do, and they're, you know, when they're like that, Down are brilliant to watch. Yeah, jeez, they're, you know, who wouldn't want to watch a team that wants to go out and play like that?
Compared to like ruining football a month ago, isn't that it? Like,
yes,
it's funny. It's funny how the wheels turn, you know. But
prison
it's
sentence,
just,
wasn't it?
Yeah. Prison sentence.
I'm not going to like. I did give them a chance. Going to Donegal. I didn't think they would win, but I gave them a real fighting chance. And one of the reasons was, if you looked the last 3 years, they were pretty poor against Fermanagh last year and very lucky to get out. And
well, as you wrote in your preview, you know, that they've always, the game after the game, they've always tended to step up. Like, they've struggled with Antrim. They were very lucky to get out in Uri that night. Fermanagh last year.
For those people that read his full preview,
I read
except those who were giving him bad manners on social media for a headline, you know, read the copy, folks. Read the full article and then make judgments.
Full article.
Jeez, he's nearly
I thought you were going to have to swear filter.
If he's not raw dogging, he's nearly breaking the filter. But you know, that has been actually a constant theme of Conor Laverty's time in charge. I'm not going to, you know, labour that, you know, but because we know that. But even, it's a mad thing, even whenever I think back to the day that they played Armagh in Clonus in the rain. Now, this is not the one, I think is his first year, 23. And they were well, but I think the last point. But even that game, I remember watching that and thinking,
other than the goals,
and the goals were all high balls on top of that game, and it was Andy Mournemen was there. But I remember coming away from that game thinking, Down are not a million miles, like, we're not a million miles away. So that's just, you know, to show that when they have come up against this kind of opposition, they've shown that they're well able to.
There are teams who will sit in the middle bracket of what is now the All-Ireland series, of, you know, beneath the Kerry, Donegal, Armagh, probably anybody beneath them. Can you honestly say that any team beneath them would want to go to Newry and play that down team in a championship game? No, they would not. Absolutely. And so, from that point of view, that would be some sin if that down team is not in the All-Ireland series. But I'm sure I've teed you up nicely there. There you go. Apologies, microphone, I've hit you again.
Go on, Jones.
What time was it? What time?
Who had that in the suite?
But that's where we're going now.
I was just coming to that because, yes, Mark McHugh was not too far in front of us, Cahair, in the press box. Saw him walking across, and obviously his dad was in the commentating with Ocean, I think. And then and Ryan McHugh was out there. But his Westmeath's team partially hold Down's fate in their hand to a degree this weekend. It's on Sunday as well.
It's
on Sunday in Tullamore, yeah. So
30 or whatever.
Yeah, so it's before the
Down will
give
know before the throw in and
what the state of play is,
what way it is.
So obviously if West and the two, Laverty and Mark McHugh, met in the middle of the pitch, and I think Mark McHugh said, it'd be great if we could both win, like if we can both get in, but then Cavan might not agree.
Cavan would not.
That would put them into the Tailteann Cup. But it is I don't even know if it's how to view it really, if you view it as a folly of the system or just a mad quirk of how things have panned out, but it is mad to think that a team that's won Division 3, won the Division 3 final, and now has beaten a team that
second favourites, probably
second favourites for the All Ireland, and still amid all the jubilation yesterday, still might face the very real prospect of the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah.
But what do you do?
It's one of those things where when quirks, I guess, come up in competitions, the first answer is everybody knows the rules when they start. Everybody knows, or they should do. As convoluted as it is, it's on you to kind of know what the rules of the competition are. But Westmeath beating Meath was seismic, in itself. Down beating Donegal is arguably on another level to that. But it's if put it this way, and Conor Laverty might say it himself, if Down wanted to be in the All Ireland this year, they should have stayed in Division 2 last year, or they've just beaten Donegal. What's to stop them beating Armagh?
Staying up last year would have been irrelevant. You still had to stay up again this year, so
yeah.
It's it's tough, but I'm going to make a defence of the system in terms of the All Ireland. I know we could be guilty of looking at it from a Down perspective in the sense of how can they win Division 3? How can they beat Donegal and not be in the All Ireland series? How can Westmeath get to the Leinster final and not be in the All Ireland series either?
Yeah.
So that, and I think you have to reward championship over league.
Yeah.
So I would have no issue if Westmeath get to a Leinster final. They deserve to be in the All Ireland series ahead of the team.
I think it's just
regardless of whether
the provincial link, isn't it? Is the issue?
Provincial is where I'm going there. Look, I've said it repeatedly. Ulster football is shooting itself in the foot with its obsession with the Ulster Championship. It makes life so hard. If this was a straight All-Ireland series of the top 16 teams, Down would be in it. They would find a way into it. If it was a straight, if there were a more even process that you'd select your 16 from, but Down have ended up on a side of an Ulster Championship draw with Donegal and Armagh on it and have to win that both games just to get into the thing, and other teams do not have to do that. And it is the Ulster Championship that Ulster teams so dearly protect and so dearly want to keep that hammers them in many ways. And you can understand both sides of it. Like the Ulster Championship is class. It can be
because we've just sat here extolling
absolutely days. And look, Donegal Armagh last year was for me the best Ulster final ever played. Yeah. It was a phenomenal game of football. So there is that side of it, but then it's what it takes away, or how difficult it makes life for Down, for Derry, for Monaghan, for those teams. Their life is so much more difficult than it is for Kildare, than it is for Clare, than it is for or even Limerick, or whoever gets the other side of the draw from Kerry. There are opportunities there for counties in Connacht who might you'll get a semi-final every couple of years. You'll get actually
Sligo got
two semi-finals and 3 you'll avoid. So it's
I think the bottom line is if you have to win a game, win the game, and that's what Down will always be looking at that. They've won bar the Laois game, and when they were already promoted, they've done everything that they've needed to do to get to this point. The fact that it's out of their hands is out of their hands. You know what I mean? There's nothing they can do about that. They'll control the controllables and all that sort of thing. So there's no use. Same thing as like yesterday when Donegal got the goal. There's no use dropping the heads and feeling sorry for yourself and saying, "Oh, we could, we just beat Donegal, but we're not going to get the rewards for it." Like, you just got to suck it up and go and win the next game.
Yeah.
And that's all. Like, it's the Down. It's that sort of, as you were saying, talking to people going into Letterkenny yesterday. It's like, Down people will think that they can beat Armagh. They definitely will. Now, whether that's rooted in any kind of evidence or sense or anything like that is irrelevant. But I mean, it has to be like, if there's any more, like the Down don't need any extra motivation in an Ulster semi-final against Armagh. They do not.
And the concrete of that belief is just hardened so much by yesterday. Yeah. Like they will now, feel that why would we not beat Armagh, and it's justifiable. It's not just it's not just empty. Why would we not? It is like we've just beaten Donegal in Letterkenny, and the thing is, so many elements of the game plan will transfer because Armagh and Donegal are quite similar in a lot of ways, and so that means that the 7 days isn't a disaster from that perspective.
But is the rabbit out of the hat in that sense?
It is. Look, they're the sitting duck now. Like Armagh get the week to look at Down and probably know that Down can't change all that much.
Like the shock and awe that Down were able to bring yesterday is now not.
Yeah, and the idea,
anymore.
like, so you put yourself in Kieran McGuinney's shoes this week. It's right, lads. Let's clog up the middle for a start. Let's watch how they overloaded the right hand side for the kick out and they pulled. They made a decoy run and they got somebody down into that pocket, and let's be aware of that pocket. All of those things now Armagh get to study and take away and shut down, and so there's only so much Down can change in the week. There's no way. I don't think anybody's sitting here thinking they could have been dual planning. To have Donegal, and then we're going to beat Donegal, and then this is the plan for Armagh. They can't have been at that at this point.
Yeah, when Kieran McGuinney spoke on Saturday evening after the win over Fermanagh, he was asked obviously about their issues at midfield, and he did reference and say, whether it's Michael Langan or Oran Murdoch that we're facing next week, and obviously that's him being respectful and stuff like that. But the week, it's 8 days for obviously Armagh. But the week might work better in Down's favour than Armagh's favour, given that their injury worries. Obviously Creeley was out, and
Callum O'Neill has a
Callum O'Neill,
shoulder.
we're not too sure.
Greg McCabe had a hamstring, so you'd have to
came off the other day, and he's heavily strapped and stuff like that. So
I don't think they'd have been playing Mournemen, and ordinarily,
yeah, exactly.
So
midfield's going to be an issue still for Armagh next weekend, probably even more so now because of the way Down played. And you look at, I was looking at the game, from 2 years ago, that the Ulster semi-final. It was another probably prison sentence for Lee Keegan or something. But the Armagh midfield that day was Rian O'Neill and Ben Creeley, and they're two players that aren't going to be available to them this weekend. So you've got. Obviously they've got the deeper squad, and lots been made of Down or Armagh's very deep squad. But it's a bit of a leveler in terms of what Down can look at,
And to touch briefly on that, like Armagh got wiped out in the middle of the field by Fermanagh at the weekend. Absolutely wiped out in the first half. Fermanagh won everything, and
it's just their shooting was so poor.
At 14-4, that game should have been 14-11. Like Fermanagh hadn't taken bad shots. Just their execution of some really good chances was woeful, and there's some difference, and everybody's looking at it and saying, "Oh, jeez, Fermanagh were so poor." And how do you judge? Performance-wise, Fermanagh did not play badly in those first 25 minutes. At 14-4, they should have been within 3 points because they just had missed so many really, really easy chances. And I think there was a lot of focus on, and look, Armagh, when they had the ball, they were very slick in attack. Like they ripped Fermanagh to bits, and they could have scored far more again. What was it, 232 they scored, and they could have had far more again. But on the other, from the midfield back, I think Armagh will be really concerned by that performance, and
Leith
particularly the
will
first half.
Leith and Rafferty
I don't know.
play this weekend, do you think?
So Blaine Hughes started against Down 2 years ago, in that, because obviously that was the All Ireland final, the All Ireland winning year. You know, you've got Murdoch and McAvoy and all those, Down a bit of height. But will Mooney start again for Down? I mean, he got 60
Mooney has
minutes,
to start.
almost 60 minutes. I mean, that's
I thought
because it was one of those ones where I thought, right, he's going to give him a half, or he's going to give him 40
I said
minutes.
Cahair, he'll come off for Cahair.
Yeah.
So
So I
I
mean,
but,
and like when
But it
you
was a
when you
50,
have-
but that
Yeah, I mean,
turnover in
that's-
Conor O'Donnell was a
was
50.
late. Just a few minutes before he went off.
and Kerr's a great option as well, especially if you think,
I think he actually came. I actually noticed he came to the sideline to speak to Laverty, and Laverty pushed him inside for a couple of minutes. I think they wanted to see, could they just regenerate him, get him inside for 3 or 4 minutes, let him
that's
suck,
right,
get the lungs filled up again and go again. But I think he hadn't got it then for the last 10, and they took him off. Like, but he did. He was a massive addition yesterday. But like, Fermanagh picked off Rafferty's kick out well in those first 10, 12 minutes as well. Like, and he didn't play out. He attacked the odd time in the first half, but he didn't play out as much as I thought he might. He didn't,
which was probably one of the reasons for his selection, was that he.
In terms, you made the point
support
last
in
week, like, in
midfield,
terms of
yeah,
kickouts, in terms of midfield, I thought he would attack more.
Yeah.
In terms of if he's in, why is he in?
Yeah.
Now at this point, was he going to go and try and help on that Fermanagh kick out? And he didn't really go into that mix.
No, he didn't.
And Fermanagh won everything. So it's like, you're looking at the reasons why he might start against Down. They still might look. I actually think that we're talking about Down and not having height. The thing is almost flipped on its head. Where do Armagh deal with Down's height around the middle, which is a mad. It's a mad conversation.
No, that's insane. Because
Absolutely.
we don't know if Mournemen's fully fit. Kieran Mackin doesn't have a lot of minutes in.
Mackin was great to see. Mackin was
but it was
going on,
great to see him coming back. Absolutely, but not a lot of minutes in the legs. There's obviously pace in, but once they get in, Nick Turbot and Connery, there's pace. But if Down can stem it, it's interesting. Like, because if Blaine Hughes starts, it could be a repeat of what happened yesterday in terms of they might let him go to the corners and put that press on. And obviously Rafferty's a different kettle of fish in the midfield, but it's an intriguing one, because it'll show the level of respect that McGeeney shows the Down by his selection in that regard. And you've got Connery and Turbot were held scoreless 2 years ago in the semi-final, so...
but there was 15 people around them.
Yeah, that's true.
Different game now.
I think the majority of the players were held scoreless that day, But except for Paddy Burns, who actually was accredited with an own goal.
Honorary down man.
Honorary down man, Paddy Burns put the ball in. I don't think he could do an awful lot about it. I think
he love that.
Came back off, So that's an interesting. But
is there just I'm mindful of another semi-final to look at as well on Saturday night, but and we've been very down heavy here. But is this a good time to get Armagh, or will Armagh be? Is on the flip side of that, I had so many Armagh people texting me in the last 12 hours or so saying, delighted that Donegal were beat because they don't like a lot of them don't like Donegal, but also Armagh really, really want an Ulster title, and the getting Donegal being out of the way now might be seen as a big obstacle gone. It's psychologically, I don't know how you.
I think psychologically there are definitely advantages for Armagh there. It's down, or it's just so hard to come off a high like that and then reproduce it again 7 days later. Armagh, as you say, have craved a provincial title. Donegal were seen as the biggest threat to it, and now they're gone. And it's no, you're not saying it's sitting there for Armagh, but they will feel that psychologically it is sitting there for them now. Let's go and take it. And
it's dangerous.
See those people that text you, just screenshot them and send them to Conor Laverty, and that's it.
I'm going to send them all.
That's that's it. The one thing I would say about Armagh, obviously the Armagh Down rivalry. I was at the Ulster Schools All Stars on Friday night in Belfast, and great occasion, the Ulster Schools in it. But the Abbey, as Macrory Cup winners, had three players on the the All-Star football team, the entire half-back line, all Armagh men, and there's a kind of tradition in
One
the
of
Abbey.
whose father was on the line with down yesterday.
That's
I
right,
think,
Tony Keelan McEntee's father,
Tony.
son of Tony. So, and Diarmuid O'Rourke, son of Aidan. But there's a tradition in the Abbey called yard ball, right? And it's effectively like, do you never see those things where some English village there's like about 50 people
like,
playing? But
yeah.
it's kind of like 20
Where they all beat
aside.
the life out of each other. Is it that?
Pretty
one?
much, yeah, something like that. It's 20
You're
aside.
on the board of governors. This.
It's like a 20-a-side football match in the
Okay.
yard, and it breaks down in Armagh lines,
Oh, right, okay.
So it's basically because it's their final year. They had a big one last week, and there was guys wearing their Armagh jerseys and guys wearing their Down jerseys, But I hope this isn't an omen. Armagh actually won
The
that
yard ball?
match, you won the yard ball, won the year.
I mean, if that's where we're
last
going
yard
for
ball.
Romans, that's,
Yard ball rules.
we told you.
Yeah,
I told you last week.
So it could be yard ball rules in Clonus next week, but the Abbey have been an interesting place this week anyway. It's a
Absolutely,
strict
straight split.
Armagh Down split, and the principal's a Derry woman, so she'd be very interested to see who comes out of that.
What a beautiful segue.
Nice
that
segue
is.
there.
Yeah,
Very good,
thank you.
yeah.
You're doing my work for me here, Paul. That's superb.
What's new?
Jeez. Derry and Monaghan on Saturday evening in Armagh. Cahair, we touched a wee bit on this last week. I suppose the big question is, because Derry are going to be big favourites to win this game, is where the threat is, what the danger is to Derry from Monaghan that you saw in the Cavan game or from Monaghan in general.
I don't know that Derry are that massive of favourites for it.
No, not massive, but they are.
They're
Favourites
favourites
for Ulster.
Favourite for Ulster now. They're 65.
As
body
we
power
discussed
for the
coming
whole
up the
Ulster
stairs
Championship.
there,
Yeah.
I do genuinely believe that is because the bookmakers are not soft, and that Derry are the most likely to be in the final. And
Well, as you
if
said,
it's an Armagh
because
Derry
they're
final,
not they're favourites.
Not many
because
per bookies, no.
not many per bookies, so we'll see how the odds change this time next week. But Monaghan, again, I was impressed with Monaghan against Cavan. I thought that, again, we're talking about invention and innovative ways to play. I felt they didn't play the way other teams play either. They didn't go for the template, and they kicked the ball. Like, I think their first 4 scores all came off kick passes, which is not the norm.
But are they going to do that against Derry? That's
Yeah, but again, I think that they looked at how Cavan defended quite narrow. Like Derry's, we touched on it a wee bit last week in terms of their setup and 3 men at the head of the arc defensively, and so Monaghan are going to try and maybe play around the fringes of that and try and play wider. And like, I just have a theory. I just have a feeling that they might push Stephen O'Hanlon inside and see, can his pace trouble Derry in the full back line a wee bit.
how do they get it to him?
Kick it.
Yeah.
As well, like if it's early enough and it's on and it's in the right position.
A bit of joy out of that early on. I mean, he's not probably the greatest example of it, but Antrim had a fairly bright start. They got the goal, they got a couple of points up,
And
they found a way in.
The goal worry, because
yeah.
Niall Burns had 4 shots inside 13, 14 minutes. And I think he scored 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a worry, and obviously it's different, but again, Monaghan will have looked at McAleer going to full forward in the second half and looked at it being, effective in the sense of it was borderline ruinous. They could have scored goals off that.
Yeah.
And in the right game, those goals matter. They wouldn't have mattered on Sunday, and how. But then is probably we can't expect Gary Mohan to be fit. But he's your obvious man for that ball, and that creates a different problem. Or you could put Carol Gallagher there, or you could put, they do have a couple of options to just the wee things that they will have looked at and saw that, right, how can we hurt Derry? Because Monaghan have definitely bits of pace, they'll look, if they push O'Hanlon inside and they have Mooney in there, it creates a man marking thing for Derry. So it's a wee bit of a conundrum then, and like because Andrew Woods has to be obviously then factored into that as well. So that creates a wee bit of the Derry have to rejig a wee tiny bit for that. And yeah, look, I thought Beggin's kicking was very good in the Cavan game, and
that's one thing obviously missed during the league, in Beggin, not playing as much. Obviously a big factor, but I mean, anybody in that half the draw will probably have seen from early on. I mean, you had Derry in the Ulster final from the get go, but look, but any of those teams, maybe Antrim, but it's a route to an Ulster final basically. Monaghan have been there, not there's probably one or two of those players maybe would have experience in an Ulster final.
Antrim?
Maybe, no, Monaghan.
Oh, Monaghan, sorry.
But, so it's not, it's not cut and dry. I think Cahair's trying his best not to say Derry will win it, but we're trying to make a case for being sort of.
Aye, sorry, because I was just going to go full nerd there, but you stopped me. But Rory Beggin, like the funny thing about Beggin is I'd say he's the only goalkeeper in Ireland doesn't kick with a tee. Like, he sets the ball on the ground, and like the trajectory and the pace that it is on his kick out, then it can fly out over the top more than anything off a tee, and it's a wild dangerous kick out. You have to be so aware and behind of that coming out over the top tee, because
you use a tee.
Oh, every goalkeeper in Ireland, bar Rory Beggin, uses a tee. I couldn't get the ball beyond the edge of the arc if I didn't have a tee, but. It's just they're what did Derry do then with Desi Ward, because obviously Cavan stepped way too far off him and gave him so much time on the ball, and Derry, I can't imagine Derry stepping off as far. Like Derry, we talked about they were pretty effective pressing Antrim very high, but how much of that was because it was Antrim and then let's just go and take the ball off them again, and we're better than them, let's just go and take it. And there is, that is part of the psychology of playing like that in that press. It's like, they're probably not going to hurt us in behind. If they do, so be it, we're still going to win the game anyway. Let's get after them and take the ball off them. So I don't know that they'll treat Monaghan that way. But then look, again, we're through all that. There's inexperience in Monaghan defence in a lot of sectors as well. Cameron Dow did well, McAlarney did well, but Derry, and again, we're talking about a man marking conundrum at one end. There's a real probably conundrum at the other end for like Niall Loughran's one of the single most underrated footballers in the country. Shane McGuigan is playing really well and is not underrated. Everybody knows about him. And then you have Lachlan Murray, who just wants to run at the black spot. And that creates a real problem. So,
and Derry aren't going to miss what they missed last time, should they not? Like, you don't. No,
look, the shooting thing was like they still scored 222.
It's similar to Armagh for man. I mean, Armagh sort of had the Tyrone game as I know it was obviously only 1 point in it, but it brought them on a bit. Derry Antrim was a bit of a loosener for them. If the draw goes the way it goes for you in Ulster, you get a loosener, and then you get the kind of get all the bad habits out. Suppose about maybe why Down were so sort of not fortunate, but they caught Donegal cold. Donegal were coming in not much. Any team that's played, Armagh obviously had the preliminary round game. Derry will go in off the back of the Antrim game as a wee kind of a loosener, sort of thing. So, not tremendously competitive for them. They have that to bring them on. So, I would favour Derry for that one, but Monaghan, one of those teams that once they get into Ulster, you just can't really kind of write them off.
What was the stat? I think Derry had 47 shots. Was it against Antrim? And they'll not get 47 shots on Sunday, but if they get 36, and their percentage will go up. I do think Derry will win it. I do, but it's kind of been dangerous all from the draw was made. It was nearly seen as a gimme. That side of the draw, it was like Derry are in the Ulster final, who they only play,
and that's an issue in itself.
And again, like Gabriel Bannigan's screensaver will be interesting this week, because he will have no shortage of options. Because that is the way that is.
I don't think he's a 0-0-0 man.
No, I don't think so. No, Gabriel would be.
I bet you he's got loads of accidental screenshots of his homepage. if he's anything like me, he's got accidental.
Oh, I have hundreds of those.
I'm conscious of the clock here, but we're going to very quickly look at. We've touched on one of the Leinster semi-finals, Westmeath and Kildare, but Dublin and Louth meeting. I think it's on Sunday as well, isn't it?
Saturday evening.
Saturday evening. Sorry, it is.
You should really know that.
Dublin Louth. I knew the Westmeath game was on.
You should know
Saturday.
that.
I
That's
should
your
know
job.
that. I know. Sorry, I should know that. And it's just funny. Like it's I suppose you could overstate the situation where Dublin are concerned, but you just wouldn't never have seen this. Say 7 or 8 years, like whenever Louth were in Division 4 at one stage, and Dublin were winning all Ireland's. But yet here we are, and Louth arguably favourites.
Yeah, they are. Well, they're favourites for the Ulster Championship, So you couldn't foresee it when Dublin were playing.
You're down on
the brain. Sorry, you couldn't foresee it when Dublin were playing every single championship match in Croke Park. Probably the fact that they've been sent out to the provinces or to the wilds, is the great leveller as well. Also, the fact that Louth and Meath and all have improved, and Donegal or Dublin have kind of not stagnated, but they've kind of they're in transition, so that's the great leveller. Louth will absolutely no fear of them, because obviously they're reigning champions, and plus Gavin Devlin will instill that into them. Ger Brennan knows all about how good Louth are, so it's shaping up to be probably a game of the weekend.
And the other thing you have as well is that we haven't ever seen the real Dublin yet under these rules because of Conor Laverty just been injured. So much of the 22 championship games that they have played since the new rules come on, or league championship games, he's only played the full of 8 of them. Yeah. He's just been injured. He's 750 minutes in total in that time, and he's injured again. He obviously, I cannot see any way he plays this weekend. He was going full tilt, sprinting in behind against Wicklow, and he pulled up right on half time and came off, and there's just no way that he could recover in time to play, and that changes the dynamic. I think I've said it repeatedly here from the start of the year watching them. I think Louth are a better team than they were when they won Leinster last year, and I just think we're back to the psychology. It's easy for them because they will feel that other people will say it, but I think they'll feel it a wee bit themselves that they won Leinster last year but they didn't beat Dublin to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we talked here about Oisin McConville's line in his book Donegal and Armagh, and how they beat Donegal in an Ulster final, but it didn't really count because it wasn't Tyrone. They beat it. It wasn't Ulster if you didn't beat Tyrone.
It's what they always said about Crossmaglen. It wasn't during Crossmaglen's dominance, for the couple of times that was interrupted. If I think Pierce Ogue maybe didn't beat Crossmaglen or something. No, might be doing it.
Cullyhanna beat them in
2009. Pierce Ogue, they were beat by somebody else in the semi-final. Pierce Ogue won the final.
Cullyhanna beat them in the semi-final, and then
I didn't mean to drag Pierce Ogue into this, but yes, that's the it's that kind of thing of Dublin.
It's not Leinster unless you beat. It's not Leinster unless you beat Dublin. It's rightly or wrongly, it's just there. They've dominated it for so long. They're not dominant. They're not, they're not favourites to win it anymore at all.
But they're still
there. They're still Dublin. You still have to beat Dublin for another year or two at least.
Give you a more up to date Oisin McConville quote. It's serious regrets after Wicklow's game with Dublin, you know, and that just shows you it's not so much that Wicklow could have beaten Dublin that day, but it's the fact that they thought they could have beat them, and every other team in Leinster thinks they can beat Dublin on their day. It's
but surely
that's
the perfect extraordinary. That's a blessing in disguise now for Dublin that game came and probably went the way it was. You would think, wasn't it? I mean, if anything's going to sharpen,
it dampens expectation in a massive way, and that's Look, I think for me, I go back to Salt Hill last year, and they were in a similar, nobody expected them to go to Salt Hill and win, and it was their best performance of the year, and they pulled something out of the bag, and I would anticipate that they bring something to this weekend's game. But look, are Louth just better than them at the minute? Are Louth just individually and collectively better than Dublin are? It'd be hard to make a case that they aren't. If they played 10 times, would they win 5 each, 6-4? It's going to be. It's certainly a debate, certainly an argument. Are Louth just better than Dublin at the minute?
Yeah.
So it will be an interesting one, and I think as much as we're saying, Dublin being talked down is psychologically good for them, but I think that that whole element of Louth not having beaten them last year gives Louth an easy out on all that. That's their psychological edge 4 outside kind of levels that up, and just think Louth are better than them.
Louth Kildare final then.
There he goes.
That's one for
down Derry Ulster final.
yeah. Well, that's
We
one
have
for-
talked down up to some.
That's,
Like,
unreal.
if the Armagh lads are listening to this,
Screenshot central.
Screenshot that.
Screenshot,
Mark
lovely.
McHugh can screenshot.
Voices.
that,
just go on out, call Sunday semi final before you go. Call Sunday semi final.
Sunday. So.
Armagh down.
Why are you doing this?
Come on, just quickly before you go.
Armagh.
Oh Jesus.
No, going to be a down Derry final. You heard it here first.
Okay, what are you saying?
See you
Man
on
who
next
left
week.
David Clifford in.
You bail out now. Yeah.
I haven't watched the videos yet.
Okay, well,
Oh,
I'd like to
reserve
retract
judgment.
that. exactly. No, well, here, screenshot away, Connor. Fill your boots. Anyway, that brings us to the end of another Monday Club. Feels like it's nearly Tuesday now. We've been in here for so long, but thank you very much to Cahair O'Kane and Paul McConville for joining me. And thank you, as always, to our sponsor, Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. We will be back next week. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcast, and we'll see you then.